Welcome to the presentation, Social Emotional Strategies in the series Executive Function and ADHD. My name is Shari Gent. I'm an education specialist with the Diagnostic Center, Northern California. The Diagnostic Center is part of the California Department of Education. We're one of 3 centers in the state of California. There's one in Northern California, Central, and Southern. We're part of the State Special Schools Division, California Department of Education. We not only provide trainings like the one today, but we also do individual assessments, independent education evaluations, and offer technical assistance in the classroom. Our services are free to students enrolled in or eligible for special education. We serve 351 school districts throughout Northern California, from Monterey County to the Oregon border. A little bit about me. I've had over 25 years experience in the public schools as a teacher and diagnostician. I am the parent of a young adult who was diagnosed as a child with attention deficit disorder, and I was selected as Educator of the Year by children and adults with attention deficit disorder, or CHAD, which is an international organization for professionals and families, as well as adults with ADHD. One thing that really influences how kids with ADHD interact socially is the fact that most individuals with ADHD have other mental health conditions. So of those diagnosed with ADHD, only about 30% have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder alone. Many others have oppositional defiant disorder, depression, anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder. These can all affect how kids relate socially to others. Many also have learning disabilities, which adds to their frustration. So we need to keep this in mind when we're thinking about how we can support kids with ADHD socially and emotionally. I'm going to show you a video about, it's an interview with 2 kids. One has ADHD and the other one does not. I want you to listen to the video and watch the video and kind of keep in mind, which child do you think may have ADHD and what kinds of challenges are they presenting or are they facing in the classroom and in daily life due to their ADHD.
How old are you?
6.5. 6.
And what grade are you in?
First grade. First grade?
Do you like school?
Yeah. No.
Why do you like school?
Because I like to play with my friends at recess.
Why don't you like school?
Because I have to do a lot of stuff and my little sister's really cute and I want to spend more time with my little sister.
How long does it take you to do your homework? A long time or a short time?
Usually 5 or 10 minutes. I don't know, sort of in the middle.
Do you have a hard time with your homework?
Sometimes.
How do you do on tests?
Good. Well, I usually get A's, but not A pluses, so I don't know. And I almost get every single one right.
Well, aren't you still proud of yourself for getting A's?
I don't know, I just feel normal.
You just feel normal? You don't feel proud of yourself?
No, you feel normal.
Okay. Do you have a lot of friends?
Yeah. No.
How do you feel about having a lot of friends?
Happy.
How do you feel about not having a lot of friends?
Lonely.
Do you get invited to parties?
Yeah. Not usually.
Do you ever get bullied?
No. Sometimes.
Do you think you are smart?
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you think you are handsome?
Yeah.
Do you think you are pretty?
Sometimes.
What do you like about yourself?
How smart I am and how good I draw. I like myself because I like Jesus and God and they're really important.
Is there anything that you dislike about yourself?
Nope. Sometimes I be bad,
How do you be bad?
like giving attitude to my mom.
Why do you think you give attitude?
I don't know, sometimes I just get into moods. It depends on how good the day is. When I have a bad day, then I get all grumpy and negative. And when I have a good day, then I get all positive and happy.
What do you want other kids like your age to know that don't have ADHD? What do you want them to know about the kids that do have ADHD?
That they are better at listening than them, and that they and that they could help them.
And how can they help the kids with ADHD?
By telling them that whatever you do, it's still right because you tried your best.
So we can see that both these kids have a different attitude towards themselves. And sadly, a lot of times kids with ADHD don't feel that they have friends. In fact, according to Betsy Hosa in her research in 2005, over half of kids with ADHD actually have no reciprocated friendships. And that's almost twice as much as the number of typical kids without friends. In addition, kids with ADHD have substantially worse social skills than other kids. Peers tend to rate kids with ADHD as undesirable partners and friends. They're not selected for teams. And they're, as strangely enough, even though we usually think of the ADHD child as being the bully, they are much more likely to be bullied than to bully, and more likely to be bullied than their typical peers. So they face considerable challenges from their peers, in social interactions with their peers. Part of the problem is that kids with ADHD are not liked because they have substantially poorer social skills. So when they're talking to their friends, a lot of times they're not as enjoyable a conversational partner. They talk way too much and they don't say as much for the number of words they're using. They constantly interrupt. When they're telling a story, they tend to have too much difficulty sequencing events and they pause too often. So if, for example, they're trying to retell the story of a movie that they happen to see or a TV show, they lose the interest of their conversational partner. on the playground, where we would think that these students might do well, because there's a lot of motor activity and they're physically involved, they oftentimes just don't know how to enter a play situation. Most kids stand on the side and observe until it's an appropriate time to enter a game. Kids with ADHD might just burst right in and try to play right off the bat, upsetting the game and the other students. They have more difficulty following rules than typical peers. They get into other kids' space, and they may react impulsively or suddenly and unpredictably. This contributes to their difficulty in being accepted when they are on the play yard. In the classroom, their behaviors can be also alienating. They oftentimes blurt out. They make remarks that are not appropriate, and can be off topic. Again, they get into other kids' space. They demand and need more support than the other students from the teacher, which can lend to resentment. They oftentimes talk in an overly loud voice for the situation. So they're more intense. They have trouble controlling their emotions, so they may have outbursts that are perceived by others as inappropriate. Let's take a look at some of the things you can do to help these students learn to regulate their pitch and volume of their voice. One rather high-tech intervention is the quiet light, and this light flashes red when the noise level gets too loud, and flashes green when it's appropriate. You can set the light for different decibels. The cost of the light is $75 to $100. I've seen it a lot of times in a school cafeteria, but I've also seen it in some classrooms. A low-tech version of this device might be just something created out of construction paper and laminated, such as in this class for kids with mental health conditions. This teacher made this display, and she has taught her students what each of the levels are, and the kids have practiced those. So when they go into a particular activity, she will set the noise level at an appropriate level for the activity. And then she provides the class with rewards based on whether they achieve that goal. This is a great app. It's called My Class Rules, and this particular app awards points to a class and detects the decibel of the noise level, and then students can receive rewards based on the number of points that the class gets. Kids with ADHD oftentimes act impulsively, so it's really important to teach them to problem solve difficult social situations and to practice ahead of time in how they're going to do that. One particular strategy for problem solving a social situation has an anagram or is named SOLVE. And SOLVE has 5 basic steps. The first step, starting with S, is to survey the situation, identify the problem, what's going on in the environment. Begin to think of what my possible options are. And L for list, what are the pros and cons of each of those options? Choose a course of action and verify. And finally, evaluate. Did that course of action that you followed through actually work? I'm going to show you a video that was created online using a fun program called Go Animate.
Today we are going to
This
talk
was
about
created by
solving
a
a problem. Kim
for
just put
class
money in the
to
soda machine and it
demonstrate
took her money.
the solve
Let's see if we can help
strategy
her figure
and
out
social
what to
problem
do.
solving
The machine took my money.
on the
What should
playground
I
or in the
do?
classroom.
Let's see if you can figure
So
out
let's
what
go
she
ahead
should
and watch
do.
this.
Should
And
she get mad?
this is a
Should she
strategy
cry?
that you
Or
could
think
try.
about how to solve the problem?
This Go
Let's
Animate
take some
is a
time
very
to think.
easy way to create animations for
Just a
instruction.
little more time.
Or you might want to use this particular
That's right, Kim should think about how to solve the
animation
problem.
yourself.
Let's see if I can help.
Let's watch.
Hello, Kim, what is the matter?
The machine took my money.
Well, let's use the problem-solving steps to figure out what to do.
Okay, what are the steps?
First, we need to stop and think about what the problem is.
Well, the problem is that the machine took my money.
Okay, next we need to think about ways to solve the problem.
Well, I could get mad, sad, or think of a way to get a drink. Or I could break the glass.
You could break the glass, Kim, but would that be a good choice?
No, I guess not.
The next step is to decide if the choice is a good choice or a bad choice. When we make choices, we need to decide if the choice is a good choice or a bad choice. What do you think a good choice would be?
I could ask for help from an adult.
Hey, that sounds like a great idea. The final step is to make the good choice and do it. Why do you think that is a good idea? Take some time to think. Okay, let's see what happens. Let's get an adult to help us.
Let's do it.
Excuse me, Mr. G, the soda machine took Kim's money. Do you think you could help us?
I would be glad to. Thanks for asking. Let's see here, I think I almost got it. Here we go, it should work for you now.
Thanks, Mr. G.
No problem.
I am glad we got some help. Thanks for teaching me the problem-solving steps.
I'm glad I could help. I will see you around. I hope you learned a lot about how to solve problems. Just remember the steps. Stop and think about what the problem is. Decide how to solve the problem. Choose the good choice and do it. This has been a social skills production for Ramiro's final project. ELED 540.
Sometimes you may have a student who has difficulty just stopping to think and before they survey the environment. So you may want to provide them with an SBT reminder. I find that taking a deep breath helps kids to pause and think, and it's a good way to remind them to take a moment to look around. So if you were going to create this strip yourself for your students, you might want to use a digital photo of the student involved actually doing each of these things. But the first step is to just stop. Stop whatever you're doing. Take a few deep breaths and then think. Especially younger kids have difficulty with this, but many kids with ADHD need to learn this step before they actually go through the full problem-solving solve approach. One thing that also helps kids to learn to inhibit their impulsivity is mindfulness training. Mindfulness training can teach self-control and self-awareness. More and more research has indicated that it also improves attention. A lot of work has been done at UCLA Mindfulness Institute with kids that have ADHD. So this is a really encouraging approach. We're very fortunate that in the Bay Area we have mindful schools in Oakland. They offer a curriculum online. You can take mindfulness training online with Mindful Schools or in person. Another curriculum that's really good is the Mind Up curriculum, which has now been evidence-based, considered to be evidence-based. And so really, overall, mindfulness can be helpful in teaching kids to reflect on their actions.
I've been using
Let's take a
mindfulness.
look
It
at
helps
how
me a
kids
lot of
can
time.
react
Just
to
helps me get
mindfulness
calmer,
training,
and it just
and
makes me feel
also
much more
an
relaxed.
example of
And I can do my
implementation
homework
in the
faster,
classroom.
more just focused on everything I'm doing and more aware of everything.
Mindfulness does that. It gives you the space to think about how to respond to things differently. And many of them really liked having that space where they were just quiet and they can just be and not be pushed to be somewhere a certain time, demanded, required to be somewhere. It really worked for them.
Mindfulness actually helps you relax and think about the problem and think about a solution to the problem and think about if you reacted in a negative way, what will be the solution to that or what will happen next. So it's definitely helped a lot.
I don't think I've ever taught you guys about the vacuum cleaner breath, have I? The vacuum cleaner is when you breathe, being able to relax. If you're upset at your brother, if you're frustrated with an assignment, whatever it is, when we're frustrated, our body gets really tense. Let's try that for 1 second, ready? So what we can do is when you breathe in, just make your whole body really tense. And then when you breathe out, we'll let it all go. Let's do it a few times.
A lot of times kids with ADHD have to deal with frustration more often than other kids. Every day they get up, go to school, and they're faced with having to focus when focus is hard for them. In addition, a lot of times kids have trouble understanding when an emotion is coming up and recognizing that emotion and before so that they can exert some self-control, because emotions tend to be abstract concepts. So finding how the emotion is expressed in their body and learning to identify emotions can be assisted by making them more concrete. And one way to do that is by charting, using colors, using graphing to help students see how they're feeling at any given time. The Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence has created a very cool and fun app called the Mood Meter. And I find the Mood Meter is very helpful for older children. The students can plot in on the mood meter how they're feeling. So this area is joyful, this area is calm, the blue area is sad, the red area is irritated and excited. Let's take a look at when they plot. These are what each square will indicate. Specifically, the student doesn't necessarily see this coding, but when they choose a particular square, this is how it registers, and these words will show up. So you can use this with the whole class to plan a lesson, or to kind of get a sense of how the class is feeling. Or you can use it with individual students. Once the student chooses a color, then the word comes up and the app gives them a choice about where they want to shift. So this particular student found that they chose something in the blue area, which is a negative feeling. They're feeling discouraged. If they want to shift to a happy place, a calm place, or if they want to stay in the blue area, they make their choice. And then this particular student chose to shift here, and And then they're given some strategy suggestions as to how to feel happier at that time. Students can then track how they felt overall over a time period. So this particular student generally, most often, registered in the happy area, and least often registered in the irritated area during this time period. So that just gives them the opportunity to see how they felt over periods of time. Lower tech intervention that you can do with your students is to record on an emotions thermometer, and this has an advantage of you can work one-to-one with a student, identify a progression of stress. For this particular student, it's anger. It could be anxiety, depending on who the student is and what their needs are. And then directly across with the student, you brainstorm a way for them to calm back down and get back to the bottom of the thermometer. So working with the student, you will help them identify the feelings, you clarify when this happens, and then teach them some type of calming technique to help them get back in control. Zones of regulation is an intervention that you can purchase. It's a curriculum, and that helps students see in their body how they're feeling, and helps them also, provides them with a way to get back into control. This can be done in a small group. The video that I have identified here, if you want to watch it, it shows a whole school using zones of regulation, starting out with small group instruction, but finishing with whole class generalization. The Incredible 5-Point Scale is another really great curriculum for social emotional learning, helping kids to, again, chart their emotions. And this is an example chart where the student has identified how what they look like when they're getting upset, what it feels like in their body. For example, they identify their feeling in their stomach, and things that that the student can do or others can do to help this particular student gain better control over their fear. Let's take a look at an assessment for the 5-point scale with a student, helping them to identify how they might feel in any given situation.
Danger zone 5. This could make me lose control. Okay. I'm going to give you some cards. This one says recess. Okay, what do you think? Which pocket does recess belong in? Does it make you nervous? Never bother you, or sometimes bother you?
I'm nervous.
Oh, okay, that's 3.
Because I never had recess here.
You haven't had recess here yet? Oh, that's a good reason. How about riding the bus?
I'm a little nervous.
That one's a little...
That might be a 2.
It sometimes bothers you, but not much. Yeah. What about this one? This is a hard one. Being teased.
Kind of like the...
All right, a 5. There you go. It's good to know that, okay? All right. What about losing at a game?
Kind of like this. Nah, I like a 1.
Oh, it doesn't bother you at all?
Right.
It's just a 1. Great. We'll have to have a game sometime so that I can win. Handwriting. 4. All right, I think so. What about listening to directions?
Kind of like a 3.
A 3, okay. What about being touched?
That's fine.
Okay, good.
Like, only like during a game.
Game.
Like freeze tag.
Oh, yes. If it's a game, then it's okay. Or is that not okay?
That's okay.
Okay. How about asking for help? Asking for help.
Kinda in like the like 2.
Okay, a 2. And then Amber, who is videotaping us, you may have some suggestions and we can write those, except I don't have my whiteboard. Going to the mall.
I only go to the mall once. That made me pretty shy.
Okay.
Also pretty exciting. So what would that be?
Shy
And exciting.
and anxiety.
No, excited.
Oh, excited. Well, you know what? You could be nervous, and that's probably a 3. Well, lately, you've been doing this a lot. Meeting new people.
Oh, that's a 3.
It's a 3, okay.
Boy, there's a lot of 3.
There's a lot of 3s, you're right. Well, 3.
Okay, another way to help kids learn about their feelings is the ALERT program. How does your engine run? This again relates emotions to bodily experience and energy level. This is really good for younger kids. It was designed by an occupational therapist. And it uses, again, different levels of feelings. It can be used with the whole class or individually or in a small group. So as I mentioned, here in California, we focus on different levels of intervention. And we have the intervention for all. So school-wide intervention is a level 1, tier 1, universal interventions. Level 2, we have small group interventions for those that need additional supports. And finally, level 3, individualized interventions, or tier 3 interventions that are more intensive. We've talked today so far about some intensive and small group interventions. Now we're going to talk more about Tier 1 universal interventions, which would be applied to all students in all settings and at all levels. Tier 1 interventions are oftentimes termed social emotional learning. What exactly is social emotional learning? Social emotional learning is defined by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And CASEL at this website identifies 5 basic components. So these include self-awareness and self-management. We talked a lot about self-management in the behavior training for ADHD. Social awareness, developing relationship skills or social skills, and finally, making responsible decisions. And we talked a little bit about that in the SOLVE strategy. All of this takes place in different environments, in the classroom, in the whole school community, at home, and in the entire community. And it all requires support at each level and in each environment. Why would we want to implement a social emotional learning program in our classroom or in our school? Actually, the research has demonstrated that it reduces the number of suspensions and expulsions and improves long-term outcome. It increases standardized test scores and grade point averages for all students, and it decreases the chances that kids are going to be arrested or be involved in substance abuse. This information can be seen at the Castle website if you want to go into more depth how CEL works. Amazingly, CEL works when student bonding improves. So the key finding is that student bonding improves achievement. That's bonding between kids at school and also student bonding with the school itself. So many times kids feel alienated from school. They don't feel it's relevant to them, but social emotional learning can help them make that bond. If you go to the Castle website, they also have a guide to evidence-based practices. If you're considering using a particular curriculum in your classroom or school-wide, you can go to Castle and see if that particular curriculum is evidence-based. So here's an example evaluating the ruler program, and we see whether the research base is extensive, adequate, or minimal. If you look at the key, so it's extensive for class-wide, minimal for the community, can give you some idea on how to use that curriculum. Let's take a look at a couple of typical social emotional learning strategies that we oftentimes see used in the general classroom. Helping kids learn the strategy of communicating with I statements can assist kids with ADHD and others to express themselves in difficult situations. So rather than blaming a peer for an action, they're owning what's going on and asking for help. Active listening is another great strategy, especially for kids with ADHD who tend to interrupt and intrude on conversations. Practice with this strategy helps kids learn to, instead of blurt out, take a moment to stop, look, rephrase what the other person is saying, ask questions, comment, give compliments, and reflect back feelings. Let's take a look at social emotional learning in action in 2 classrooms.
Once a week in Shirley Guerrero's 4th grade classroom, students set aside academics to focus on a different kind of learning.
I feel angry when you bother me because I need respect. I feel disrespected.
Guerrero's students at Public School 24 in Brooklyn, New York, are learning to identify their feelings and communicate what's behind them. It's part of a small but growing movement in education called social and emotional learning. Today's lesson is about self-expression, using what's called an I message.
My name is Julia, and when I'm angry, I want to yell at people.
An I message is basically a way to communicate. It opens up communication, and it helps kids do exactly that, express their feelings and what they need.
We have to talk about what we feel because that's the only way that we're going to solve our problems.
A lot of children hold in what they're feeling, and then that's what interferes with their learning.
We're going to embrace the anger, but we're going to transform
Watching you in your class, I thought, she's their therapist.
No, far from it. That's not what we're doing. It's not about therapy. It's about giving them the tools they need so that they can deal with those emotions so that they can focus on the academics.
So pay attention to what I'm doing, and then you're going to try to...
Down the hall, a different kind of lesson. The teacher is Martine Alvarado.
Okay, so Kevin, you want to start?
Mr. Alvarado, I have a problem outside in the schoolyard that a kid is calling me a midget, and Mr. Alvarado.
Yes. My lesson today was on active listening. I wanted them to actually see what poor listening looked like.
I can't do stuff because I'm weak. Mr. Alvarado, are you listening?
Yes, I'm listening.
Having a
If you're actively listening, you can better understand where one person is coming from their own point of view.
Mr. Alvarado.
Yes. All right, so what happened there? Who would like to share out? We're trying to teach kids here how to get along with one another, how to speak with each other, how to be respectful, how to alleviate conflict. This is a curriculum that gives students a voice. It gives them a time to reflect.
There was a lot of aggression within my classroom, and when we covered a lot of what to do when we're feeling angry, that helped the students. They know how to handle the anger. They know how to stop and think. I think stopping and thinking is a key skill that they need to be able to do.
When we leave the school or at home, we know how to solve our problems.
These 4th and 5th graders at Public School 24 say they've changed because of the things they've learned in school.
What do you get out of talking about your feelings?
When I share my feelings now with other people, I feel safe and I feel like I can let my feelings out. It doesn't stay inside of me.
Has this class helped you?
I used to get, like if somebody said something to me, I used to get so angry. I learned to like relax for a second and like think about what I was gonna do next, like instead of just acting out of the wild.
What's different about you?
Whenever someone wanted to be my friend, I used to like move away from them. And now I learned that that get to knowing people is much better. So like you could like share your stuff with them and you could trust them.
The more relaxed they are, you know, the less problems they have, the less emotions or negative emotions that they're feeling, the better able they are to deal with the academics.
So the key here is, as the teacher was saying, that the better able they are to deal with their emotions, then they can get ready to deal with learning academics. And goals. These are some of the other activities that this particular website can help you organize. Anyway, I think it's just a really good way to incorporate technology into your social emotional learning program. Some additional resources for you as teachers and for your students include these books, Mindfulness for Teens with ADHD. Donna Geffner, who's a speech and language specialist, wrote a book on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, what professionals need to know. This is an older book. It's still available at Amazon, but it's the only book that I know of that's specifically directed for speech and language specialists, and that explicitly talks about pragmatic language difficulties, pragmatic language being related to social interaction skills, the language that we use when we interact socially. An additional resource is the Diagnostic Center, Northern California. Keep coming back to our website, to our Facebook page for updates and more information on this topic and others. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your continued work with students who have ADHD and other conditions, and good luck in the future.